The bitter Tennessee winter gnawed through Eleanor Blackwood's woolen shawl as she stared at the empty trail leading back to town. The wagon tracks, her last connection to civilization, were already disappearing under fresh snowfall. No one was coming back for her. At 7 months pregnant and newly widowed, she pressed a trembling hand to her swollen belly, fighting back tears that would only freeze on her cheeks. The abandoned hunting cabin that now served as her shelter creaked under the mounting weight of snow, as unforgiving and cold as the community that had cast her out. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "They won't take us, little one," she whispered to her unborn child. "But we aren't finished yet." The relentless mountain wind howled through the cracks in the weathered walls of the hunting cabin. Eleanor Blackwood, 24 years old and carrying the child of her late husband, struggled to maintain the dying embers of the small fire that stood between survival and freezing to death. Her chestnut hair, once the envy of every young woman in Oakridge Valley, hung in limp strands around her gaunt face. Eyes that had once sparkled with the promise of a bright future now reflected only the grim determination to survive one more day. 3 weeks had passed since the funeral of Thomas Blackwood, whose body they'd pulled from the Hollow Creek mine collapse. 3 weeks since his family had discovered the truth about Eleanor's heritage, that her maternal grandmother had been a runaway slave. One drop of blood deemed impure by the standards of 1876, Tennessee society was enough to transform Eleanor from a grieving widow into an unwelcome burden. "We won't support a colored child in this family," her father-in-law had declared, his voice cold as the approaching winter. The Blackwood name must remain untarnished. The memory of those words still burned in Eleanor's mind as she added another precious piece of kindling to the struggling fire. Outside, the snow had been falling steadily for 2 days, piling against the cabin walls like a prison of white. Her supplies, hastily gathered when the townsmen had driven her to this abandoned hunter's cabin 10 miles from town, were dwindling faster than she had anticipated. A sharp kick from within her womb brought a fleeting smile to Eleanor's cracked lips. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" she murmured, stroking her belly through the threadbare dress. "Just like your father." Thomas had known about her heritage and loved her anyway, defying his family by marrying her in a quiet ceremony 2 years earlier. His job at the mine had provided enough for them to live modestly but comfortably in a small cottage on the outskirts of town. They had been careful, keeping her background secret even as whispers occasionally followed them through town. Thomas had promised that once he saved enough money, they would move north where such things mattered less. But the mine collapse had destroyed those dreams, along with the lives of 12 men. And without Thomas's protection, the truth had surfaced like a body in a spring thaw. A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the cabin's lone window, drawing Eleanor's attention to the worsening storm outside. The sky had darkened to a threatening slate gray, despite the early afternoon hour. Soon it would be impossible to gather more firewood, and what she had wouldn't last through the night. Wrapping her shawl more tightly around her shoulders, Eleanor forced herself to her feet. The constant ache in her lower back intensified with the movement, but she ignored it. She had no choice but to venture out while there was still light. Pulling on Thomas's coat, the only item of his she'd been allowed to keep, she braced herself against the biting cold that awaited beyond the door. The force of the wind nearly knocked her back as she stepped outside. Snow immediately clung to her eyelashes, momentarily blinding her. Ducking her head, Eleanor pushed forward toward the edge of the clearing, where fallen branches might still be accessible beneath the towering pines. Each step was an effort, her swollen belly and the deep snow making progress painfully slow. By the time she reached the tree line, Her breath came in ragged gasps visible in the freezing air. Bending to gather wood sent shooting pains across her abdomen, but Eleanor methodically collected what she could, piling branches in the crook of her arm. A strange sensation drew her attention deeper into the woods, a warmth that seemed to emanate from beyond the next ridge. Curious and desperate for any source of heat, Eleanor carefully navigated between the trees, following what felt like an invisible thread pulling her forward. The dull ache in her back suddenly sharpened, causing her to gasp and drop several branches. Leaning against a pine trunk for support, Eleanor waited for the pain to subside. When it finally eased, she noticed smoke rising in the distance. Real smoke, not the illusion of someone desperate for salvation. Hope surged through her veins. Perhaps a trapper or hunter had made camp nearby, someone who might spare a few supplies or even help her return to civilization. Not Oakridge Valley, which had rejected her, but perhaps the next town over where no one knew her history. The decision to investigate cost Eleanor dearly. Halfway to the source of the smoke, another pain tore through her, this one different, deeper and more insistent. Her knees buckled, sending her crashing into the snow. The branches scattered around her as she clutched her belly in alarm. "No!" she gasped. "Not now! Not here!" But her body had other plans. The baby, likely stressed by Eleanor's exertion and the extreme cold, had decided it was time to enter the world. 2 months too early and in the worst possible circumstances. Eleanor tried to stand, to return to the cabin, but another contraction sent her back to her knees. Panic threatened to overwhelm her as she realized she might die here, alone in the snow, taking her unborn child with her. The injustice of it all, surviving the rejection of her husband's family and the town, only to perish within sight of potential help, brought tears that immediately froze on her cheeks. Through the haze of pain and fear, Eleanor barely registered the approach of a tall figure through the snow. Only when a shadow fell across her did she look up into the weathered face of a man unlike any she had encountered before. High cheekbones, copper skin, and deep-set eyes that seemed to look through her rather than at her marked him as Native American. His long black hair, streaked with silver, was braided and adorned with small tokens she couldn't identify. He wore a mixture of traditional clothing and items clearly traded from white settlers, buckskin leggings beneath a heavy wool coat. The stranger knelt beside her, saying nothing as he assessed her condition with calm efficiency. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep and accented but clear. "The child comes early," he stated simply. "You cannot stay here." Eleanor could only nod, another contraction stealing her breath. Without hesitation, the man gathered her into his arms, lifting her with surprising strength for one who appeared to be in his 50s. As he carried her through the deepening snow, Eleanor caught glimpses of designs painted on his face, lines and symbols in faded red and black. "Who are you?" she managed to ask between pains. "I am called Grey Wolf by my people," he replied, navigating the forest with confident steps despite his burden. "The white men call me Joseph. My name is Eleanor Blackwood," she offered, clinging to conversation as a distraction from her fear. "My husband is with the ancestors." Grey Wolf finished for her. "I know the spirits speak of your sorrow." Under different circumstances, such a statement might have frightened Eleanor, but pain and desperation had stripped away conventional concerns. If this man was her only hope of survival, she would not question his ways. They crested a small rise, and Eleanor saw the source of the smoke she had followed, a small cabin, more solidly built than her temporary shelter, with light glowing from within. Unlike the abandoned hunter's shack, this structure showed signs of permanent habitation. A well-tended woodpile covered against the snow, skins stretched on frames for tanning, and various tools hung beneath the small porch overhang. a woman, appeared in the doorway as they approached, short and sturdy, with the same copper complexion as Grey Wolf, though her features were softer, her face less marked by time. She wore a simple dress of settler design over what appeared to be traditional leggings. Her black hair streaked with more grey than the man's and pulled back in a practical bun. "Bring her inside, husband," she said, holding the door wider. Her English carried only a slight accent. "The birth spirit has found us again." The interior of the cabin was warm and surprisingly spacious, divided by hanging blankets into separate areas. Grey Wolf carried Eleanor to a bed covered in furs near the central fire pit, which burned with a fragrant wood that filled the air with a subtle, calming scent. Various bundles of dried plants hung from the ceiling beams, and shelves along one wall held an assortment of clay pots, wooden boxes, and glass bottles. "I am Sparrow," the woman told Eleanor as she helped remove the snow-soaked coat. "This one comes too early." 2 months, Eleanor confirmed, gasping as another contraction seized her. "It's too soon." Sparrow exchanged a look with Grey Wolf, silent communication passing between them. He nodded once and moved to the shelves, selecting several bundles of dried herbs, while Sparrow helped Eleanor into a more comfortable position. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "The spirit of your child is strong," Sparrow assured her, placing experienced hands on Eleanor's distended belly. "But we must help it find the right path into this world." As Grey Wolf prepared what appeared to be medicinal teas and poultices, Sparrow tended to Eleanor with quiet efficiency, examining her with a combination of traditional methods and knowledge that suggested some training in Western medicine as well. The contractions continued to intensify, coming closer together despite Sparrow's efforts to slow the labor. "How did you find me?" Eleanor asked between pains, trying to distract herself. Grey Wolf, mixing something in a small wooden bowl, answered without looking up. "The deer showed me your tracks, then the crow called from the dying tree." Eleanor blinked in confusion, but Sparrow offered a small smile of clarification. "My husband saw deer moving strangely near our hunting grounds. They were avoiding something. He investigated and found your tracks in the snow. When he followed them, a crow's call drew his attention to where you had fallen." "You track game in this weather?" Eleanor asked. "We track life," Grey Wolf corrected, bringing a steaming cup to her. "Drink. It will give strength to you and the child." The liquid was bitter but not unpleasant, with hints of mint and something earthier beneath. Almost immediately, a warming sensation spread through Eleanor's body, dulling the edge of the pain without removing her awareness of the contractions. As the hours passed and her labor progressed, Eleanor learned more about her unlikely saviors. Grey Wolf was a medicine man of the Cherokee, though his mother had been Shawnee. He and Sparrow lived between worlds, respected by their own people for their healing skills, but also sought out by settlers brave enough to trust native medicine when conventional doctors failed them. "Why do you help me?" Eleanor asked during a brief respite between contractions. "Your people have every reason to turn away from mine." Sparrow, preparing clean cloths for the birth, paused. "Life does not choose where it begins. The Great Spirit sends souls to all peoples. We honor the Spirit, not the divisions of men." Grey Wolf, who had been crushing something with a mortar and pestle, added, "The child you carry has called to us for many moons. Its spirit is old and knows its path." Under other circumstances, such words might have sounded like superstition to Eleanor's ears, but something in the certainty with which they were spoken resonated with her own strange sense that this baby was special, a feeling she had carried since she first felt it move within her. As night fell fully and the storm reached its peak, Eleanor's labor intensified beyond anything she had imagined. The pain came in waves that threatened to drown her consciousness. Sparrow remained steady at her side, wiping her brow with cool cloths and murmuring encouragement in both English and Cherokee. Grey Wolf moved to the head of the bed, placing his hands gently on Eleanor's temples. As he began to chant softly, she felt a curious sensation, as if something was reaching past her physical pain to touch a deeper part of her being. The cabin seemed to fade around her, replaced by visions of forests in spring, of clear running streams, of a sky so vast it made her heart ache with its beauty. "Stay with the visions," Sparrow instructed, noting Eleanor's widened eyes. "They will carry you through." The birth progressed with agonizing slowness. Twice, Eleanor felt herself slipping toward unconsciousness, only to be drawn back by Grey Wolf's steady chanting and Sparrow's firm commands. Outside, the blizzard raged, sealing them in a pocket of warmth and struggle separate from the rest of the world. Near midnight, when Eleanor's strength was all but spent, Sparrow announced that the baby was finally ready to emerge. "One more. Hush," she encouraged. "The child comes now." With a final desperate effort, Eleanor bore down. The sensation of relief was immediate and overwhelming as the tiny body slipped free. But the expected cry did not come. The silence stretched for one heartbeat, then another. "The cord," Sparrow said tersely to her husband. "It is around the neck." Grey Wolf moved with practiced speed, his fingers deftly unwrapping the umbilical cord from the infant's throat. He turned the tiny body, blue-tinged and motionless in his hands. Bending close, he breathed gently into the baby's mouth, then began a soft chant that seemed to vibrate through the very air of the cabin. Eleanor tried to rise, panic giving her renewed strength. "My baby!" "Be still," Sparrow commanded, pressing her back against the furs. "Let him work." The Cherokee medicine man continued his ministrations, alternating between breathing for the infant and pressing gently on its chest. All the while, the chant continued, rising and falling like the wind outside. Eleanor watched through a haze of tears, silently bargaining with any power that would listen, promising anything if only her child would live. Then, like the first crack of ice breaking in spring, a tiny cough shattered the silence. It was followed by another, and then a thin cry that gradually strengthened. Grey Wolf's weathered face broke into a rare smile as he wrapped the now pink infant in a soft deerskin. "Your daughter greets the world," he announced, placing the bundle in Eleanor's trembling arms. "She has fought her first battle and won." The baby was impossibly small, with a dusting of dark hair and skin that hinted at her mixed heritage. Her eyes, when they briefly opened, were a deep blue that Eleanor knew would likely darken to match her father's brown. Despite her early arrival, the infant's grip was surprisingly strong as she clutched Eleanor's finger. "She should not have survived," Sparrow said quietly, cleaning up the birthing area. "Being born so early, in such cold, her spirit is very determined." Eleanor could only nod, tears flowing freely now as she counted tiny fingers and toes, marveling at this miracle that had emerged from tragedy. As Sparrow helped her position the baby to nurse for the first time, Eleanor finally asked the question that had been growing in her mind. "How did you know to be here? This cabin, so close to where I was left. It can't be coincidence." Grey Wolf and Sparrow exchanged another of their meaningful glances before he answered. 3 moons ago, I dreamed of a woman with child abandoned. In the snow," he explained, sitting cross-legged near the fire. "The dream came again and again, showing me this place, this time. So we came from our winter camp to the east. We have been waiting. You came because of a dream, to help someone you didn't know." Eleanor's voice betrayed her disbelief. Sparrow smiled gently. "My husband's dreams are not like others. When the spirits speak to him, he listens." "But why me? Why would your spirits care about a white woman's fate?" Grey Wolf regarded her with those penetrating eyes that seemed to see far beyond the physical. The spirits do not see as men see. They do not care about the color of skin or the tribe of birth. They saw a mother and child in need, and they sent us to help. He paused, studying the nursing infant. But there is more. Your daughter carries an old soul, one known to our people. She has returned for a purpose. Eleanor instinctively held her baby closer, a flash of fear crossing her face. What purpose? To heal, Sparrow answered simply. Her hands will carry medicine for both your people and ours. This is what was shown to Grey Wolf. The idea that her newborn daughter might have some predetermined destiny felt overwhelming to Eleanor, especially in her exhausted state. Yet there was a rightness to it that she couldn't deny, a feeling that had been growing since the moment she discovered her pregnancy. What happens now? She asked, the immediate question of survival reasserting itself. The people who left me wanted both of us gone. I have nowhere to go, no family left. Grey Wolf rose and moved to the door, opening it slightly to check the storm. The snowfall had lessened, though drifts had formed against the cabin walls. First, you rest, he said decisively. You and the child need to regain strength. The winter is long, but this cabin will shelter you. This is your home, Eleanor protested. I can't take it from you. Sparrow shook her head. It is only one of our places. We move with the seasons. This cabin was built for healing, for those who need shelter until they find their path. When the thaw comes, Grey Wolf continued, we will help you reach Cedar Ridge. There is a doctor there, a white man who studied with me for 2 summers. He respects our ways and will help you make a new beginning. A doctor who studied with a Cherokee medicine man. Eleanor's surprise was evident. Sparrow nodded. The world is changing, even if slowly. There are those who see beyond old hatreds. As if to emphasize her mother's words, the baby released Eleanor's breast and let out a surprisingly strong cry before settling back to sleep. The sound seemed to fill the cabin with renewed life, pushing back the shadows of uncertainty. She needs a name, Sparrow observed. Eleanor looked down at her daughter's face, so peaceful despite the turmoil of her entry into the world. A name came to her, one that honored both her husband's memory and the circumstances of her child's birth. Hope, she said softly. Her name is Hope Blackwood. Grey Wolf nodded approvingly. A good name, strong medicine. As the night deepened and the storm gradually retreated, Eleanor felt an unexpected sense of peace descend. The path ahead would not be easy. A mixed-race widow with a newborn faced countless challenges in this unforgiving time. But for tonight, at least, they were safe, protected by the most unlikely guardians she could have imagined. Before sleep claimed her, Eleanor gazed once more at her daughter's tiny face. Whatever destiny awaited this child, healer, bridge between worlds, or simply survivor, Eleanor vowed she would live to see it unfold. The society that had cast them out had underestimated the strength of a mother's determination and the power of unexpected kindness. Outside, as if marking the moment, the wind shifted. The howling that had persisted for days softened to a gentle whisper, carrying the promise of eventual spring. Within the cabin's sheltering walls, 3 adults and 1 newborn child formed an improbable family, brought together by forces deeper than blood or tradition. The universal bond of humanity that transcended the artificial boundaries created by fear and ignorance. For Eleanor Blackwood, who had faced death alone in the snow mere hours before, this unexpected sanctuary represented more than physical salvation. It offered something she had thought forever lost after Thomas's death and her subsequent rejection. Hope that goodness still existed in a world that had shown her only cruelty, and faith that her daughter might grow up in a better world than the one that had tried to bury them both beneath the indifferent snow. As winter yielded to spring, Eleanor's strength returned alongside her daughter's growth. Hope, despite her premature birth, thrived under the watchful care of Grey Wolf and Sparrow. The medicine man created special teas to enrich Eleanor's milk, while Sparrow taught her to wrap the infant in rabbit fur slings that kept her warm against the lingering mountain chill. Eleanor learned quickly, absorbing the couple's knowledge with a hunger born of necessity. She watched Grey Wolf gather early spring plants, memorizing which roots helped with fever and which berries settled stomach ailments. She observed Sparrow's hands as they crafted poultices for wounds and tinctures for coughs. "Your hands remember what they once knew," Grey Wolf remarked one evening, watching Eleanor expertly bind a sprained wrist he had acquired while chopping wood. "My grandmother," Eleanor admitted quietly. "Before she died, she taught me things, remedies she brought from Africa, mixed with what she learned from local healers. My mother forbade it after her death, said it was uncivilized." Grey Wolf nodded. All medicine paths eventually meet at the same river. As the snow melted from the mountain passes, traders occasionally stopped at the cabin. Eleanor tensed at each arrival, fearing recognition, but Grey Wolf's reputation kept questions to a minimum. The visitors simply accepted her presence as that of another patient under the medicine man's care. One trader, a half-French trapper named Marcel, became a regular visitor, bringing news from surrounding settlements. It was from him they learned that Eleanor had been presumed dead, her body supposedly lost in the winter storm, a convenient fiction spread by the Blackwood family to avoid scandal. "They search no more for you," Sparrow told Eleanor as they gathered early strawberries near the cabin. "You are free to become whoever you choose now." The realization settled over Eleanor like a warm blanket. Her old life, the pretense of acceptance in white society, the struggle to hide her heritage, was finished. Here, in this liminal space between worlds, she had found unexpected liberty. When Hope reached her 3rd month, showing remarkable alertness and strength for a child born so prematurely, Grey Wolf announced it was time to continue their journey. The mountain growing season was short. They needed to reach their summer camp to plant corn and beans. "What about Cedar Ridge?" Eleanor asked, remembering their promise to connect her with the doctor there. "The path will be clear in 2 weeks," Grey Wolf assured her. "We will guide you there before continuing our journey." The preparation for departure awakened a deep anxiety in Eleanor. Though eager to establish independence, she had grown attached to the safety of the cabin and the wisdom of her unlikely mentors. The prospect of facing an unknown town, even one with a potentially sympathetic doctor, filled her with dread. The night before their planned journey to Cedar Ridge, Eleanor found herself unable to sleep. Standing in the cabin doorway, she watched moonlight transform the valley into a silver dreamscape. Behind her, Hope slept peacefully in the cradle Grey Wolf had carved for her. "The path ahead troubles your spirit," came Sparrow's voice as the older woman joined her. "What if the doctor in Cedar Ridge rejects us?" Eleanor whispered. "What if they discover my heritage or see Hope's mixed blood?" Sparrow's hand, worn from decades of work, covered Eleanor's. "Then you will find another path, as you have before." "I'm tired of running," Eleanor confessed. Sparrow was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "Then perhaps you should stop running." "What do you mean?" "Come with us," Sparrow said. "Simply, not to Cedar Ridge but to our summer grounds. Learn our ways completely. When autumn comes, choose your path with clearer eyes." Eleanor stared at the older woman. "Your people would accept us?" "Not all," Sparrow acknowledged honestly. "Some hearts are closed, among my people as among yours. But many would see only a mother and child in need of family." "And Grey Wolf," Sparrow smiled. "It was his suggestion. He believes your daughter's path and ours are twined together, at least for a time." The summer camp of Grey Wolf's band nestled in a hidden valley, accessible only by a narrow trail that wound between towering rock formations. 23 people, a mixture of traditional Cherokee families and those of mixed heritage who had avoided the Trail of Tears decades earlier, greeted them with cautious curiosity. Eleanor felt the weight of their stares as Grey Wolf introduced her in Cherokee, then English. She stood straight, hope secured to her chest in the carrier Sparrow had taught her to make, and met their gazes directly. An elderly woman, her face mapped with wrinkles that spoke of a century of living, approached Eleanor slowly. The camp fell silent as she reached out with gnarled fingers to touch Hope's cheek. The baby, usually shy with strangers, gurgled happily and grasped the woman's finger. The old woman's face transformed with a smile. She spoke rapidly in Cherokee, causing murmurs among the gathered people. "What did she say?" Eleanor whispered to Sparrow. "She says Hope has the eyes of a healer," Sparrow translated. "She welcomes you both to our fire." With those words, the tension dissolved. Children crowded forward to see the baby. Women offered Eleanor food, and men nodded respectfully before returning to their tasks. Not everyone welcomed them. Some maintained distance, their expressions guarded, but enough did to make Eleanor feel the first tendrils of belonging take root in her heart. Through summer's heat, Eleanor worked alongside the Cherokee women, learning their language, absorbing their stories, and sharing what knowledge she possessed. Hope grew plump and strong, adored by the camp children who vied for chances to make her laugh with her newly discovered giggle. Eleanor's hands, once soft from a relatively privileged life, toughened as she planted corn, tanned hides, and gathered medicines. Her skin darkened under the summer sun, revealing the heritage she had once been taught to conceal. For the first time in her life, she felt no shame in this visible connection to her grandmother. Grey Wolf began teaching Eleanor more advanced medicine, recognizing in her a natural affinity for healing. She learned to set bones, birth babies, and treat fevers that might have otherwise claimed lives. When a hunting party returned with a man gored by a buffalo, it was Eleanor's steady hands that cleaned and stitched the wound that saved his leg. "You have found your path," Grey Wolf observed as they gathered herbs one autumn morning, frost crunching beneath their feet. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "I believe I have." The decision crystallized within her over the following days. When Grey Wolf spoke of the band's imminent departure for their winter grounds, a different location from the cabin where Hope had been born, Eleanor knew what she must do. "I wish to build my own cabin," she announced that evening by the communal fire, near the western creek where the healing plants grow thick. Grey Wolf exchanged glances with the other elders. "Winter comes quickly to these mountains." "I know." Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "But Hope and I belong to neither world fully. We must create our own place between them." An older man, a hunting leader named Swift Hawk, spoke up. "The Western Creek lies at the boundary of our territory and the white settlements. It is a dangerous place to be alone." "Perhaps that is why it is the right place," Eleanor replied. "A foot in each world, belonging completely to neither, like my daughter, like me." After much discussion, the elders agreed. The men of the band helped Eleanor construct a sturdy cabin before they departed for their winter camp. Sparrow remained, an extra week, helping set up stores and medicines. When the day of parting came, Sparrow embraced Eleanor fiercely. "You are not alone," she promised. "We will return with the spring thaw." Grey Wolf placed his hands on Hope's head in blessing. "This child will draw those who need healing," he prophesied, "both your people and mine. Be ready." Word spread, slowly at first, whispers that reached the white settlements about a woman healer living alone in the foothills, one who knew both native remedies and conventional medicine. Those desperate enough ventured to her cabin, finding a serene young woman with a mixed-race child who asked no questions about background or beliefs, only about symptoms. Eleanor treated poor farmers, native families, freed slaves, and occasionally even wealthy townsfolk who came in disguise. She delivered babies, set bones, treated fevers, and dispensed herbal remedies with quiet competence. Payment came in many forms: food, cloth, tools, or simple labor around her growing homestead. 5 years passed. Hope grew into a solemn child with an uncanny ability to sense illness before symptoms appeared. She followed her mother on herb-gathering expeditions, her small hands already skilled at preparing simple remedies. On a crisp autumn day, a wagon arrived bearing a distinguished older man, white-haired, well-dressed, his bearing suggesting education and privilege. Eleanor tensed automatically, drawing Hope behind her skirts. "Mrs. Blackwood?" the man inquired politely, removing his hat. "I go by Miss Eleanor now," she corrected, one hand on the knife at her belt. "My name is Dr. James Montgomery," he introduced himself, "from the university in Nashville. I've heard remarkable things about your healing skills from both settlers and native people." Eleanor's wariness didn't diminish. "What do you want, Dr. Montgomery?" "To learn," he said simply, "and perhaps to offer something in return." He reached into his coat and withdrew a letter. "I've established a small clinic at the crossroads, 10 miles east. I treat all who come, regardless of race or station. But I find my conventional training lacking in many cases." Eleanor accepted the letter cautiously, scanning its contents, an official invitation to collaborate, to share knowledge, and perhaps even to teach others. "Why would you want knowledge from someone like me?" she asked, bluntly. Dr. Montgomery smiled sadly. "Because 20 years ago, my wife died of childbed fever. Traditional medicine failed her. Later, I watched Cherokee healers save a woman with identical symptoms using methods unknown to me." Hope peered around her mother's skirts, studying. "The doctor with serious eyes. He's sick inside," she announced with a child's directness. "In his chest. He needs foxglove tea and willow bark." The doctor's eyes widened in astonishment. Eleanor suppressed a smile. Hope's uncanny diagnostic abilities still surprised even her. "Perhaps," Eleanor said carefully, "we should discuss this partnership over tea." Dr. Montgomery nodded, a new respect in his eyes. "Perhaps we should." As they moved toward the cabin door, Eleanor glanced at the mountain ridge, where gray wolf and sparrow would return come spring. The medicine man's prophecy echoed in her mind that hope would draw those needing healing from both worlds. In the face of tragedy and abandonment, Eleanor had found not just survival, but purpose. From the edge of death in a snowstorm had emerged a new life and an unexpected path, one that might, in its small way, help bridge the divide between worlds that had nearly claimed both her and her daughter. Hope skipped ahead, already pulling dried herbs from their storage shelves. Completely at home in this place between cultures, Eleanor followed, head high, no longer a woman cast out, but one who had found her true belonging, not in either world that had rejected parts of her, but in the healing space she had created between them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.